Monday mornings with Matt and Kevin. Topics that come up around the dinner table will be given the truth treatment with no punches held and no falsehood left standing.
And here we are again for Matt and Kevin on a Monday morning. Monday mornings with Matt and Kevin. See, it's fitting for a Monday morning show for me to start it out with the improper name. But hopefully everyone's waking up with us right now. Hopefully you have a cup of coffee, cup of tea, cup of mate, whatever your thing is, and enjoying conversations with the two of us. As we say before every show, we are not experts on pretty much anything. Maybe baseball, which we talked about last week. We know that pretty well. I got some complaints about us talking about baseball. People are like, "What, did you guys seriously do a segment about baseball?" And you know what? I don't care because we talk about whatever we want to talk about. But we hope you guys stick with us anyway. But anyway, we're not experts. If you have questions about theology, bring it to your priest. If you have questions about health or science, I suppose, bring it to your doctor. If you have a question about politics, bring it to I don't know, Joe Biden's whatever's left of his brain. He may have an answer for you. Give it a shot. And Matt, today we're going to start off the show. We're going to talk about today. I'm hoping to have on a priest to talk about the situation with the CMRI. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to get that loaded, but I hope we will. That'll come up later. And you also did an interview with Joe from Twitter. You're going to talk about the Rosary, I believe. Is that right? Yeah, that's right.
Yes, exactly.
And you and I are going to talk about, in the second segment, we're going to talk about public schools and I don't know, kind of how they can be esoteric and a little bit creepy, kind of rebounding off of the show we did with Intro Evo last week. And we're going to start off with a tweet that went semi-viral and kind of exploded the traditional Twitter world maybe a couple weeks ago now. So Matt, if you want to read that tweet, then we'll kind of comment on it.
Yeah, should I read the tweet about Aaron Judge falling short of the single season home run record? Or he's 11 short, 9 short, but no. Yeah, so on September 30th, a tweet went viral in Catholic Twitter world, and it was from William JV. He probably, if he's listening, he's probably like, "Oh no, you're going to read my tweet," but we wanted to talk about it. So the tweet reads, quote, "Men want a woman who bakes brownies and makes rosaries, not a woman who reads theology." So the first thing when I saw this tweet was I looked at the comments, because before I engage, it's been a habit of mine to, just comment really quick before I actually sometimes take a step back and think or read what other people are saying. And actually, it was pretty funny, because what I noticed as I scrolled through all the comments, Kevin, was that the women, for the most part, were up in protest about this tweet. And the men, for the most part, were pretty much, on the same page as William, with a few nuances here. And other than the guys with, pronouns in their bio, they tend to agree with William. I did notice that. And the wording here is, and you and I were just talking about this before we started, the wording here is very interesting, because he says, not a woman who reads, and that word reads is a little bit, it allows for some interpretation. So when I read this, my first comment was, the feminists are showing, because they didn't like this. And so when I took a step back and wanted to think through it, I said to myself, okay, I have to think with the mind of the church, right? I can't make subjective interpretations. I can't say, well, and I noticed, to be blunt, a lot of the women doing this. Well, in my situation, in my home, in my house, in my town.
Right. Men do it too. Men
do it too, right? Men do it too, but the women who are just agreeing were kind of making it very subjective, and you can't do that. You have to, I was telling a friend about this the other day. You can't say, well, if I was born from two parents who had, marital relations outside, marriage, that doesn't make it okay. You could say, yeah, I wouldn't be here without it, but the act was still wrong. But anyway, so I try to think with the mind of the church, right? And I went back to these key points. The husband is the head of the home. You can't debate that. The wife is the heart of the home. Can't debate that. So I think women should be knowledgeable about the faith. So that word reads, I take issue with it, because women should be knowledgeable about the faith, and theological discussions. These things are good. But the problem here is, and I think this kind of went off the direction a little bit, and maybe you can chime in, Kevin, is women shouldn't instruct their husbands. Women shouldn't correct their husbands. It's the man's job to be knowledgeable of the catechism and whatnot. And if you have this conflict in your marriage or in your family and whatnot of who's telling who here, who's leading the family in faith, your dynamic is not really in line with what the church promulgates as the proper authority in the home.
Well, and I think as we all know, we're in a situation where this is fitting not only just in the family, this is fitting in our churches and in our church hierarchy, because we don't have a pope at the moment, and we don't have a church hierarchy to truly be, the form that we are obedient to. And so in some cases, we have to kind of make our own decisions. Now, it's like when we go to our priest. If we go to church, you and I, as men and men, especially if we're, husbands and fathers, we go to a church and, we typically listen to the priest and say, okay, yes, the priest is telling us the truth. We don't question that. Even if we say, oh, that sounds a little, funky, or we don't like that, or we don't want him to talk about immodesty, blah, blah, blah. But what we have to have is enough knowledge of our faith to know if that priest is teaching error. So if I go to a chapel and the priest says Mary was not immaculate, then you can absolutely say, whoa, I know, because I know enough of my faith to say that is wrong. I don't have to obey my priest. And it's the same, even with a pope, even though, as we know, a pope cannot teach error. But if a pope does say something, or a man who calls himself pope says something that is in error, that is heretical, that is against Catholic teaching, then we can say, okay, I don't have to obey this. But there is usually, that form, there's always that form of hierarchy, and it's the same in the family, that there should be, there's this level of a hierarchical obedience, and the wife does owe it to her husband, and that is absolutely unquestionable. But the wife does have to know her faith well enough to be able to say if the husband is wrong and is teaching contrary to the church.
Yeah, and I think that is where, right there, that point you just hit on, Kevin, was the point of maybe disagreement. So if the husband is wrong, right, and the wife has to correct him, how do you go about that? How do you kind of say, how do you respect his authority in the home, but also have it be your duty as a Catholic, first and foremost, to, say, you're wrong on this. And I think, the tweet broke apart in so many different directions. And I think that's what caused, that's what caused the controversy, was because, you can say, like, yeah, there are part of it that are true, but there are also part of it's, well, do you want your husband leading your family into error? That's his defect. That's his job to know these things. So, thinking for myself, and I don't know how you might feel with your own, family, but for me, I wouldn't want to debate my wife on,
right,
say what Bellarmine said. I think that's just so, like, it's just so, I don't know, distasteful, maybe. I think men, not all of us, first, but there's a sweetness to, baking the brownies or the cannolis in my instance, or making the rosaries or doing feminine things. How deep should women concern themselves with these issues? And I think that women should know their catechism. I've never said otherwise. And I think women should know their faith, and I think women should know these important aspects of our church. But do you want them to be the lecturer of their husbands on these matters? I think a guy, if I was in that case, if I was, if my wife was coming to me saying, hey, you're wrong here, wrong, I would feel like, like, either I'm not doing my job or she's bossing me around. I would feel, I don't know, there has to be a good level of conversation where you're respectful, where it's understood as maybe it's more so a conversation, not a debate. There's a very fine line, I think, in a lot of these things. And
for myself, I mean, I am very lucky to have a wife who is very intelligent, well-read, and doesn't mind digging into, I mean, she read, Pope Pius X's Catechism on Modernism. And again, she studies these things, but she has never, and I don't think she would ever, I hope she would never question when I say this is how we should teach our kids, or this is the direction I want to go spiritually. And she understands that, and she understands her place there. But I also have to understand that I am not all knowing, and I am very willing to say and to take her advice and to take what she has read. If she's read something, especially that I haven't, that she can say, hey, what do you think about this? But that's why it's also nuanced. You have to have these conversations. You have to be, can't just be a dictator in a family. It doesn't work that way. And it's not happy for anybody. And I think that But in the end, the call should come down to the husband, except if he is leading the family into error. And then, of course, the wife does have a responsibility to make sure their children are not being led in error. Say if the husband goes down the Diamond Brother line and decides, oh, well, the baptism of desire and baptism of blood are not, they're not enough. They're not fitting. You have to be baptized by water, which is contrary to the teachings of the church. But we know many people who do it. Then the wife can absolutely stand up and say, you cannot have our children believe this. And the next steps, I don't know. Talk to a priest about it. I mean, that's definitely beyond me. But I think, again, it's very nuanced. It's a complicated thing. But I think it is important, again, to say that women do have a subservient place in the relationship and in the marriage. That's just Catholic teaching, unquestionably.
I was just going to read. So Kenneth, you had him on the show, and he made this great tweet. I was the other day. Yeah, awesome guy, awesome conversation you had with him. Knows a lot. I saved a screenshot from his tweet, so I wanted to read this really quick. So he posted it, and it's from a book. It's called Happiness and Holiness in Marriage, pre-Vatican. And it reads, and this really kind of sums up, Kevin, what you and I were saying. It says, the father as the priest. And then, so the next line here, that the husband and the father has priestly functions to perform in the house should appear obvious from the fact that in the Christian family, which is a miniature replica of the mystical body of Christ, the church, he represents Christ as the head of the home. And Christ was sent by the Father to exercise priestly functions and to have the care or the guardianship of souls. Specifically, he was sent to perform these priestly functions to teach the people made known to them the truth of God and to intercede for them. That's a little blurb that I cut out. And it's true. We as men have to be responsible for the salvation of our children to an extent that, we give them the tools to, we have to instill the faith in them. It all comes down to us, right? The children look up to us. The wife has to look up to us. We have to be knowledgeable enough to teach this. It's not like, am I knowledgeable in sports? Am I knowledgeable in computers? Am I knowledgeable in, whatever? This is our salvation. This is our faith. This is, we either go to heaven or we go to hell. We have to have a firm foundation of our faith to lead our family. And when that dynamic is off, right? When the wife is leading the husband, there has to be an unhappiness there. There has to be a role reversal. There has to be a dynamic that's not in line with what the church has taught and teaches on, because the father is priest of the home.
And it's also something that affects society, and we see it directly. And this is also, again, something that Pius X taught. And I don't remember where. I've got to find out exactly where he taught this, but I know Stephen Spray is a big proponent of it, that women should in no case, and I know women are going to hate me for this. They're all going to unsubscribe. But Pius X, who is a saint,
unfollow.
Yeah, exactly. He's a great pope. He was against women holding any form of leadership roles in society. That's in terms of business, in politics, etc.
And you know what? I think there are a lot of women who are happy that way. I really do. There was a tweet. This is kind of so off topic, but there was a tweet around COVID when or a little after COVID, when Joe Biden said, this pandemic has locked women out of the workforce. And you wouldn't believe the amount of women on Twitter who quote tweeted that and said, please lock me out of the workforce. I don't think women are happy in a lot of these leadership positions. I'm not speaking for everybody, but I think for the most part, they feel safe and they feel secure when they know that their husbands or men could lead them. They don't want to make these decisions. They don't want to be responsible, because these are heavy issues, right? I mean, it's even for myself, and your story is a little different from mine, but coming from the Novus Ordo to, recognize and resist to sede vacante, it's a lot of questions that I feel like I myself wanted to have sorted out before I had a family. I can see how it's very difficult. Like, let's say, you have a wife, you have children, you say, hey, by the way, all this stuff we've been doing for 20 years is wrong now. We're sede vacantes today, or whatever. It's a lot to sort out, and it's a big responsibility. And I don't think any man would want to put that on his wife. And I don't think any woman is really happy in that position. She wants to be able to submit herself to her husband's decisions.
Well, and I think that, again, it sounds, I think women take that as being like it's an insult, and we're saying that, hey, your place is in the home and not in society. But the perhaps the most important job in society is the raising of the children, right? I mean, it is, that is the future of the world, and that is where the women should be, and that's what they do best. They are carers. That is what they are meant to be. They are the heart. They are meant to shape the future generation. So again, this is not putting women down. I mean, and I've seen women, and I've seen women in the workforce who can be good bosses, and they can do a good job, and they work hard, and they're smart. It's not, I mean, my wife is much more intelligent than I am. I don't deny that. She's extremely intelligent, and she's educated. She's much more educated than I am. I mean, and that's, and I don't have a problem admitting that. I don't have a problem admitting that she can be, but it would be a problem if she was out, and again, it is how it has to be in today's society, unfortunately. But if she was out in the workforce and I was at home with the kids, that would be bad for everybody, for the kids, for me, and for my wife. Now, again, I understand some cases you can't help. That's just how the world works sometimes. But as Matt said at the beginning, you can't judge things off of the straw man, off of these, the 1% scenarios. You have to base it off of what should we want in society? Right. What should we want in our families? And the women absolutely 100% should be subservient, and they should not be questioning theology except for having the understanding of what they must know in order to make sure that their children are not led into error. Just as we have the responsibility when we go to church, and when we have the responsibility when we look to the Pope or the anti-Pope in Rome. And that's really important to understand, that level of obedience that we must have. And it's something that clearly people did not understand back in the 1960s, because everyone followed along in pure obedience to what went on after Vatican II. Not everyone, most people, rather than saying, nope, this cannot be, this cannot happen. And fortunately for us, some people did do that and were right in doing that, and we still have faith because of it. But it's tough. But I think it's an interesting conversation, and I think it's one that we don't want to demean women. I think that it comes off that way sometimes, and women get really upset about it, and that's not the case. But we have to be really clear about what the church teaching is and what the roles are. And I think if we're not, then we're being disingenuous, and it's a danger to families and to society.
Right. Right. I mean, even thinking back, growing up, like what made the home? It was all women. My mother, my grandparents. It was always grandmother's house. I was thinking about that. It was never grandpa's house. It was always grandmother's house, because, kind of as you said, my grandmother's made that house. It was such a home. It was so nurturing, and it was so safe, and it was so. I think about all the characteristics of those houses that I would visit as a child, and like all these adjectives. It was, like I just said, it was safe, it was nurturing, it was caring. Only men can never do that. I don't think. There's that softness, that feminine love, that gentleness of women that creates beauty out of these things. And why, if I was a woman, I would think, why would I want to concern myself with these things when I could, spend the day, I don't know, doing those things, as William said, baking and making rosaries and in the garden or whatever. I would feel much happier. I would feel much simpler. I would have a lot of stress and anxiety lifted off me, because my job, my role is to, care for the home. And that's an area, both my grandmothers had a great pride in that too. They loved, they would never have thought about, I need to, be some theological expert or I don't know, boss or whatever. They took a great pride in keeping the home up and loving their husbands and loving the children, because, as G.K. Chesterton said, why would you want to vote when you could change the world with how you raise your family? And I think that is, as you said, it's not putting women down at all. It's elevating them. It's saying that, look at the beauty you can give society. Look at the treasure. Look at the richness you can do with that beautiful emulation you can have of Our Lady, and really bring that feminine nature into the home and raise beautiful families.
Right. Yeah, 100%. And I think, again, as we say that, I'll quote Jane Austen, and men of sense do not want silly wives. So I think that's the other side. And that's what women took from that quote, from the tweet that okay, wow, he wants us to make brownies. Right, I'm a little idiot. So the tweet was badly worded, and I totally understand why women kind of were upset about it. But I think again, it's got to be taken in. Let's take a step back and understand what the actual place for everyone is, and that, hey, women, and I do agree. I think it's really important for my wife to be able to make bread and to be able to cook and to bake, because I do think that's an important role of the wife in the family, just as it's an important role for me to be able to bring bread home, to bring the flour home, I have to be able to do that. And if I can't, then I am failing in my position as a husband. And if she can't properly care for a home, then she is failing in her position. Now, some cases are different, but in general, that's the truth. And I think that we need to remember that. And again, remember, well, just simply what the church teaches. The church has plenty of wisdom about this family structure. So if you question that, go check out what the church says. And perhaps we'll see if we can find some links to add to the show. That will wrap up this first segment. And we're going to head, I hope, next over to Father Carlos Borja and his a bit of an update about what's going on with the seminaries. 4 different seminaries for the CMRI. And, well, they might just need a little bit of your help. So stay tuned for that coming up next. And we are back and about to talk with my good friend, Father Carlos Borja. We're going to talk about the growth of the CMRI. And before we do, it's something that really is amazing to me. I mean, I'm only, 33, so I'm not an old guy, but even in my young age, I've seen a lot of growth in the seminaries and in the convents around the world. And even in the last 2 years, it just seems like it's exploded. You've had 4 seminarians ordained to the priesthood from Florida, 4 in Cincinnati. You have 9 seminarians, I believe it was, in Nigeria under Father Bede. You have a new convent or new oblates in Cincinnati as well, the oblates of the Holy Face. A lot going on and going in the right direction in the traditional Catholic sphere, movement, the state of Acontis world, I suppose. And thank God, truly, because we need as much as we can get in terms of vocations. And Father Borja is going to talk to us today about exactly what's going on with the CMRI, because there's been some pretty big changes, a lot of growth, and, well, 6 new priests, God willing, to be ordained in May. So, Father Borja, thank you so much again for joining the show. Where do you want to start? What's going on with the CMRI, Father?
Well, Kevin, thanks for having me. And yes, there's a lot going on. I don't know if you recently saw my Twitter post, but I put some pictures online of some of the seminaries that we have here at the CMRI. This year at Monterey Seminary, there in Omaha/Iowa, we have 18 seminarians total. And, it's obviously a large group.
Is that the most ever, Father? Sorry.
That I can think of, yes. To my recollection, the bishop fairly recently he separated the religious from the secular seminarians. So the religious were out in Colorado, but this year actually he founded St. Louis de Montfort Seminary up in Rathdrum, Idaho, and that is going to be the religious seminary for the seminarians that have taken the vows and that are part of that are actual members of the Congregation of Mary Immaculate Queen. So they retained their novitiate down in Olathe, Colorado, St. Joseph's Novitiate. And so they have 4 religious seminarians at the St. Louis de Montfort Seminary, and they have 6 postulants and novices there at St. Joseph's Novitiate in Colorado. So definitely some growth there. And then at the minor seminary that is run by Father Benedict, also in Rathdrum, they have 12 minor seminarians. So
12. Wow.
Yep, 12 minor seminarians overall. A pretty big group, and a lot of prayers would be appreciated for a successful school year, and just for the success of these young men who are striving to discern their vocation, and God willing, one day be another Christ, an alter Christus.
And Father, we've described this before in other shows, but maybe people are listening that haven't heard those before. Can you tell real quickly the differences between the minor seminary and then what does it mean to be a religious and to be in the seminary in Omaha? What's the difference? Just simply.
Sure. So the minor seminary is for those who are of high school age, and these young men are still in high school. They're taking all of their normal high school curriculum in addition with the focus of discerning the possible priestly vocations. So they have a lot of things that are going to assist them in that daily mass. They follow a daily prayer schedule. They live in community, and they have these helps to assist them in discerning a possible priestly vocation. So that the minor seminary, specifically for young men who are of high school, who are at the high school level. And then for the major seminary, we have the religious and the secular seminary. And so the religious would be, as I mentioned earlier, just those who have taken the vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience and belong specifically to the Congregation of Mary Immaculate Queen because of the profession of their vows. They belong to the congregation. Whereas with the secular seminarians, they are seminarians that have not taken these vows, do not per se belong to the congregation, but work under His Excellency Bishop Perverunus. So once they're ordained, they will be directly working under the bishop.
And for anyone else, again, watching for the first time, the priests, correct me if I'm wrong, Father, but the priests, if they go by their first name, that at least typically means that they are religious, because that is the name that they were, it's their religious name, I suppose. So like my brother, Father Philip, his name, his given name, his baptismal name was not Philip, but he took that upon his novitiate. And so we would call him Father Philip, while we would call you Father Borja. And I think that's generally, is that custom, or is that a rule?
That's a custom. It's pretty standard. I know in Mexico, they call priests by their first names. At least that was my experience. But the priests that were not, yeah. So, but I know here in the United States, that's typical. It's just standard. And some people may call me by my first name, just as a people who know me very well, family, close friends, etc. I've had that before. But normally, typically, yes, secular priests would be called by their last name, and religious priests by the religious name that they took on or that they were given when they received the habit and became novices. And
so, Father Benedict, is he working together with Father Gregory, who I know Father Gregory is in charge of the religious seminary now? Are they working together? Are they in the exact same location or in the same area in Idaho?
So they're up in if you've ever been up to Rathdrum, to the City of Mary, they have the minor seminary, they have a convent, they have a school, they have the seminary chapel, they have the church building, etc. So there's quite a bit of area up there. So they are on the same property. But yes, Father Benedict, I believe, is the one that's in charge of the major seminary. And Father Gregory, it works with him. And then Father Benedict also is in charge of the minor seminary. And I believe that's because Father Benedict is the older priest there. But they work together in the major seminary. And then also Father Benedict, like I said, takes care of the minor seminary as well.
Interesting. And in Father Benedict, I can say firsthand that he does a very good job with these boys. We had over the summer, we had a group of these boys. How many? I think 6 of them came to Germany, and we went to Rome together. And they were the most well-behaved, mild-mannered, 16, 17-year-olds I've ever met in my life. I was almost bored. I was having to, pump some energy into these guys. And, it was a lot of fun. But I was very impressed with how they behaved and how do I say it? How they seemed well grounded in their faith, and they seem to take it very seriously. And 2 of them, one my brother Gabriel, they're both now up in Olathe as postulants with Father Bernard Welp, I believe, is in charge
Novice
of their
master. Yes,
novice master. Okay, and so that's another beautiful thing that I mentioned in a short podcast or my dad did, about the growth of that church up there in Olathe. It's again, you see, sometimes it's very slow growth, but to see this growth and things changing and just slowly moving and progressing, I think it's a nice thing, Father. And I think in a world that continues to get crazier and crazier, it's nice to have consistency, some consistent growth, to see 6 seminarians, taking their final steps to the priesthood. And I believe 2 of them are from Poland and 1 from Argentina. Is that right?
So one of them, we have two Polish seminarians, but one of them will be the advancing
Oh,
towards
I
the
see.
priest.
Okay.
Yes, and then we also have um, one from Scotland and one from Argentina that will be becoming priests in May.
It's beautiful, and it's so desperately needed. I mean, I don't know, of course, if they're going to be sent to Europe or anytime soon. They may need time, of course, in the U.S. with older priests, but the bishop will of course manage that. But it is so desperately needed, in Europe, and with the craziness again in the Novus Ordo, the world gets crazy, and well, Bergoglio goes right along with it, and you really start to see a lot of people finding the truth and finding traditional Catholicism. And do you think, Father, does that kind of work hand in hand with the growth of the seminaries as well? Is it kind of together, or is that kind of a different side of the growth, I suppose, with the seminaries?
Well, I think that I think it does go hand in hand, because the crazier the world gets, I think the more people search for sanity and search for truth and just for stability. And we know that God in the Catholic Church give us that stability. So I think that does go hand in hand. So as the world gets crazier, more people crave and yearn for godliness.
And I think that Father Benedict mentioned in a previous podcast on this channel that a lot of the fruits of the hard work of the sisters and of the priests, of course, who worked with these Catholic schools, throughout the U.S. especially, that were small at times. I think have also grown, and some have shrunk and some have grown larger. And I think that from these Catholic schools that had so much work put into them by what at a time was a very little amount of nuns, that's really a lot of the fruit has come from that, I believe. I think there are quite a few of these seminarians and minor seminarians who've come from these families who've benefited from the teaching sisters.
Yes, I mean, for myself, I mentioned this, I think, on the first podcast that you ever did for your. Yep. And for myself, I know the sisters played a very important part in fostering a vocation and just inspiring me with a love for the priesthood and to something to be aspired after. So I know that for myself personally, having benefited from Catholic education, from the work of the sisters there, at least in Omaha, for myself personally, was of great benefit, as I'm sure it was for you as well.
Absolutely, and I'm still in contact with some of them, and it's something that will shape your life. I mean, if you have I don't want to say friends, but I suppose friends. It's not the right word, but people who are your mentors and people who are there to help you and be there for you and laugh with you, and they've given their whole lives to God, it will absolutely affect your life. And even if you're not going to the school there, even if you just get to spend time with them, it really is remarkable. And is that something too, Father? Are the congregations, the CMRI and the CMD, which are different as well? So the CMD is, I think you could again tell me if I'm wrong, is directly under Bishop Pivarunas, based out of Omaha, while the CMRI is it directly under Bishop Pivarunas as well? I guess there's a Mother Superior.
So right, so the CMRI they have their superiors. They have their superior general for the religious priests and brothers, and the religious sisters as well. They ultimately answer to the superior general. But for the sisters, they do have their mother, Reverend Mother, their mother's general, which is Reverend Mother Mary Agnes. And but yeah, so the CMRI. The priests and religious and the sisters are under the bishop because he is the superior general of the congregation, whereas the congregation of the Mother of God, the Mater Dei sisters, they were founded specifically by the bishop to be of assistance to him in whatever parishes he would need them, even if he were not the superior general of the CMRI. The CMD sisters would be directly under him.
And they've also grown by leaps and bounds, Father. I mean, I know, again, when I was in high school, there were maybe 13 or 14 sisters. I think it was around that number. And now I think it's over 30. Is that right?
I think it was either 37 or 38.
Wow.
the CMD sisters. And I know the CMRI sisters also have experienced quite a bit of growth as well, and continue to grow. And I think their numbers are, I want to say probably close to 50.
Okay. Yeah. And they are also spread out. I know that they're primarily based in Spokane, but they're spread out around the US as well. I know they have different congregations where they go and help teach. And I guess, Father, maybe the last question I'd have for you is I know that the seminary is bursting at the seams. You are struggling for space. And I think there's already at least some thinking of expanding just simply out of need, which is a very good problem to have, I suppose. I mean, or who knows, maybe you're going to need to get some big seminary one of these days if you keep growing and growing, which is, again, a beautiful thing. What's the best way for people to support the seminary? Is it just the best if I attach the link to your website, Father, or how can people help?
Yeah, I mean, we have our website, and there's a page, a donation page that will send you to PayPal, but they do take a fee for that. So if someone would like to just directly send, for example, a check or whatnot to directly to the seminary, that also would be helpful as well. But yes, we have materdeiseminary.org, and there's a donation page on there that if someone wishes to donate, or if you want to send it directly to the seminary as well, that would work too.
And is there a possible way to contact you, Father? I know I had a man here in Europe looking to send money in a way that was not over PayPal, and I think he was just having a hard time finding a way to do that. Is that something that's best to just contact you and figure it out from there?
So the treasurer, the person who takes care of our finances would be Sister Gertrude, and she works out of the church there in Omaha. So she would, in regards to like if someone wants to like do a wire transfer or whatnot, she would be the best one to contact.
Got it.
For that.
So then probably I would want to just attach the phone number for the church in order to contact Sister Gertrude.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Then I'll do that, because I know, again, it's something that people see this growth. I think people are excited about the growth, and I think that there's a lot to be excited about. And I hope that people at the very least will support what is going on with the CMRI and the CMD with their prayers. We have it sounds like about 40 seminarians, minor seminarians. I guess they're not quite there yet, but with the right intentions, seeing if it could possibly be their vocation, or seeing if it's something that they might want to try out once they're out of high school. But that's pretty incredible. And it's just, for me, even to have seen this growth, it's really exciting. And I hope with God's help, with the prayers of everyone, and with some financial support, because, well, people got to eat. And, sometimes if you're going to have 30 seminarians next year, you're going to have to probably expand a little bit, or you're going to have triple bunk beds. And I don't know if seminarians are going to be able to deal with that too much. I mean, hopefully not too much.
We have them already. So we have some rooms that have triple bunks, and the other rooms have bunk beds. So yes,
Goodness gracious.
Trying to fit them wherever we can.
Well, and that's, and the priests, if there's anything, they're supposed to be modeled after Christ. And I talked about, humility is one of the greatest forms of holiness, I suppose. So I guess sharing a room with two other seminarians, I suppose it's a good way to be humble. But again, if anyone wants to contribute in, maybe one of these days expanding the seminary, please, I'll attach the link to the website. You can donate to the best of causes with Father. And if you prefer to donate to St. Gertrude the Great or to the Most Holy Trinity Seminary in Florida, do that as well. We need as many good priests as we can possibly get. And, well, again, they need to eat, and, they need at least a triple bunk bed to sleep in. So, Father Borja, I really appreciate it. We'll have to come. I'll have to have you on again sometime to talk even more in detail, and maybe I'll share again. I'm going to have to share again. I think the first ever podcast on this channel was with Father Borja, talking about the CMRI and talking about Father's own his own vocation. It's very nice. Believe it or not, we still had pretty good content a year and a half ago, even though it was about as rough as it is now. So some things never actually change. And Father has stuck with us through thick and thin. He's always there for us. He's been bugged by me since almost 20 years now. So some things, again, humility and patience, Father. I'm going to make you a saint faster than anybody else.
One way or another, right?
One way or another. All right, Father Borja, I really appreciate it. Until next time, God bless you.
God bless you too, Kevin.
Okay, and we're back with Kevin and Matt and Kevin on a Monday morning. Thanks for sticking with us. And so, Matt, this is going to be kind of primarily your segment because you have an experience here.
All me.
Yeah, it's all you. We're going to talk about the kind of the education system and some of the weird stuff that you saw in the public schools. I was homeschooled, so I got not much to say.
So you did the interview a few days ago with Inchuribo at Altari Day, and he was talking about, do you remember the name of the school, Kevin? They're called
Waldorf,
right? Okay. So I was listening to this interview in the car, actually. I put it on for a drive, and Kevin's guest, Inchuribo, he was talking about all of these practices that took part in these Waldorf schools where, he says that, I walked in, there was no computers, there was no technology, the phones were on the wall, like old fashioned here. What's going on here? And he kind of really just expanded on how these schools are really looking to channel, right? They're looking to channel, these spirits, or they're looking to channel like their, I don't know, whatever kind of, interior growth or connection,
it's pure occultism. It's creepy.
Right. So he's saying these things, and I'm like, wow. I worked in a public school for 5 or 6 years, and the things that he was saying, I was like, you know what? Like, these were infiltrating, these were making its way into the public school, and I don't think most, if any, parents are aware of it, and I don't even think that most teachers truly understand it. And that's what I wanted to talk about here a little bit today. So any parents who might be listening, they might have heard this phrase. What it's called is social emotional learning. And it is like this new theory that is sweeping the public school system, that is being implemented. I'll talk about what it is in just a bit, but it is sweeping the public school system and is being implemented by teachers through the staff in districts across the country. I've listened to a few talks on this when I was in the public schools. We, watched workshops on this. We, what would you call them? Just across different states, right? We would see how it was implemented in California and Texas and wherever, Florida. And the theory behind it is that the school is no longer responsible to teach just, say, math or writing or reading. And this is what caught me in your interview with Inchuribo, but to shape the whole person, the whole child as a whole. And on the onset, doesn't sound too bad, right?
Right.
When I was in this,
if you're going to Catholic school, then it's good. You're being shaped with theology and philosophy and goodness.
Beautiful.
But if you're being shaped by the state, well, yikes.
Right. So what it was, and the thing here is it doesn't take, I'm not saying all these teachers are in on this. I don't think they are, right? All it takes is one person from the tippy top to infiltrate it all down, and then, everybody's following suit, right? All it takes is one to mislead, not the masses. But so what we did is the philosophy was, as I said, shape the school, shape the culture, shape the child as a whole person. And it was basically assuming the role as parent, right? It was about means of influencing behavior on the child in the name of social justice. So the thing that made this hard, big flashing lights, right? So the thing was, this wasn't just like a subject in school. It wasn't like, from 2:30 to 3:15, we do social emotional learning. This encompassed the entire culture in these buildings. And what we would do is we would have the kids. So when Inchuribo was saying, the kids were painting or they were doing dances, and what did he say? Like, they can get expelled if they didn't do the dance. They were, drawing or reading poetry. This was very much incorporated into what I saw and what we were taught and what we were made to do. So there was so much role play. And what it does is we would start the day with a mood meter. So there was this chart. I can't hold anything up to show anybody, but there was this chart with all different colors: blue, green, yellow, red, orange, whatever. They're all mixed. And you had to kind of see, how do you feel today? Are you angry but you're bored? Are you angry but you're upset? Are you sad but you don't know why? There was this whole range of emotions, right? And you had to kind of interiorly reflect on, how do I feel? And then what we would do is we would work on, how we kind of work through those emotions, because I think the philosophy and the mindset being taught with this and preached to the parents was that kids aren't behaving, kids aren't doing well, we have major discipline problems, we need to focus more on the social emotional part of the child rather than just math, reading, writing, and all those.
And so tell me if I'm wrong, but I've talked to people who are raising young kids, and they think that the way to handle this is to understand the emotions, which is good.
Yes.
And then to give in, they literally say, okay, yep, so you're feeling angry right now. Then, really feel it and, really express it.
Yeah.
And it's like, what are you talking about? That's like so contrary to not even just, the faith. It's contrary to common sense. If you have emotions, you need to learn how to control your emotions, not to express them.
Well, it was a complete desensitization of all of it, because what it did, and this was as I stepped away from it, because again, when I was kind of in this, I thought there was a lot of good things in it here. I thought, yeah, it's true. Like, if kids aren't the same as they were in, like, say, the 90s or the 80s or the 50s, or, things have changed. And so if a child is angry or upset or sad or what have you, you had to be really empathetic. You had to be really like, I understand. How can I help you? It was a softening, but more than anything, it was a desensitization to the point where you're entitled to your truth. You are entitled to how you feel. And that point right there, however you feel is valid, was the driving point where we could desensitize everything. You could talk about sex ed. You can talk about whatever gender you might want to be. You can talk about whatever, pagan celebration your family does around the holidays or what have you. It had to be understood in the compass of understanding, right? So you might have, back in, I think you and I talked about this once before, when I was growing up, if you heard that a kid had like two moms or two, like, that's weird, right? Like, that, what's wrong with you? Today, like, oh, that's beautiful. Like, your family's so different. It's this complete desensitization of where the school replaces the parenting, right? Parents aren't sending their kids to school with their own set of values to learn how to read, how to write, how to do math, whatever, but how to think regardless of what your parents say, right? So if you come from a home that embraces, let's just say, traditional marriage, that doesn't matter when your child is in school, because your child in school will love and embrace that, oh, he has two moms, he has two dads, whatever, chaos you want to bring into the picture. So it's replaced math. It's replaced all of these academia skills because they want to get to the whole person. And when they do this, when they desensitize you, when they make you sort of empathetic and, very emotional and social, and it ties into what we were talking about last week too, of how young boys today are very different from what once was. And it's because of this. Social emotional learning is shaping these kids to be the sensitive, compassionate kind. They're not going to hurt a fly because they're so in tune with their emotions and how that might make the fly feel. And it's the driving force, as I said, that is really bringing into these schools communism, these Marxist agendas, and it's teaching you, the last point I want to make, it's teaching you really as a child just to be purely acceptant and obedient to whatever error might be given to you because you don't understand that person's truth.
Well, and that's so obviously empathy is a good thing. I mean, charity
Yes.
and empathy, these are obviously virtues.
Yes.
But the issue is if it becomes, as you said, if there's no objective truth, then
Right.
What are you empathizing with? Are you
Right.
understanding everything? Are you saying, well, yeah, you just punched Billy in the face, but what were you feeling? Were you angry? Oh, I understand. No, is it bad or is it good? I mean, this is pretty simple. I mean,
So
it seems to be gone. Yeah.
listen to this. So one of the things that happened at recess, I'll never forget it. There was a bully, as every grade, every generation has bullies. And this kid was a pain in the neck. He totally was. And he would push and he would push and he would push. He pushed a wrong kid one day. Kid punched him in the nose, had a bloody nose. So that was dealt with in a way that, and the thing is, the whole school knew that this kid is a bully, right? It wasn't hidden. But what they had to do, how do you fix this? We would call it, you're going to chuckle, it was called a restorative circle. And what that is when so the kid who was the bully, the kid who punched him, and then a mediator. They all had to sit literally in a circle, and they had to take, like, you could take whatever you want. You could take a pen, you could take any object. And when you're holding the pen, you can talk. You could, and the thing was, is that you had to share what you were feeling in that moment, and then you had to project how it made the other person feel, right? So the kid who, in my mind, was punched the kid in the face. I was 100% behind him. He was totally justified in doing that, I have to say. But he had to kind of made it to believe that that was his fault, that he should have allowed himself to be picked on, to be bullied, to be teased, and maybe to use his words. Or it's just the silly thing that it goes nowhere. They have these restorative circles and they have these little meetings, and then it's the same thing the next day. I can tell you right now that punch in the face sent a signal infinitely more valuable than 2 million restorative circles.
Well, and how crazy is it? I mean, this all wraps into even the Novus Ordo. I mean, everything in our time is all run by emotions. It's how does this make me feel? How do you feel about this? Feelings. Well, we should know that one of our entire purposes of being here is to subjugate our will, to tell our will that whatever I feel, I must control it, and I must control it in a way that God wills it. Not my will, not my emotions, not how I feel. What does God want me to do? And this is drastically what society wants us to forget. And they desperately want to teach our kids through the Novus Ordo Church, through education, that everything you feel is validated and vindicated, even if it's wrong, even if it's anger, even if it's these sinful feelings of envy or lust or whatever. It's okay to feel them because that's how you feel, and that's objectively wrong. It's sinful. Now, if you have temptations, etc., of course, if you don't give in to them, but the point, we have to subject our will. We have to control our emotions and our feelings, and that has totally been tried. They try desperately to expunge it from society.
And if you think about it too, it all connects. So when you look at, say, because I picked up on this around election time, the Democrats are very good at painting themselves as the compassionate, the understanding, we're going to take care of you type. That module fits very well with what they're shaping kids today, which is why, when you do these polls or what have you, not that the Republicans are any better, but when you do these polls in public schools, these kids lean, for the most part, pretty liberal because the alignment is there, right? Compassion, understanding, love is love, right? You hear these phrases, you see these things. It's a total desensitization of right and wrong. That is, there's no such thing anymore. Right.
Well, here's an example of compassion, and this is a really good example that here in Germany, the left, of course, their compassion is saying, oh, there's war in Libya, there's war in Syria, there's war here, and here, so we're going to allow in all refugees because that's the compassionate, that's the charitable thing to do. And on the surface, it's like, okay, yeah, that sounds right, that sounds Catholic, that sounds Christian, but okay, you can't just do these things without any logic or any suffering, and they should be the ones allowed in rather than, well, you're 20 to 40-year-old men who should be over there fighting for their own countries. They're coming here to try to get a sucker contract. Now, this is absolutely proven. You can talk to people, many of these people who are immigrants or asylum seekers here in Germany. I've experienced this. Now, there are people who really do flee war, and they should be allowed to come in, and they should be taken care of. I think that's fine. But again, you're totally right. This is how they get you. They really get it to say, see, if you're against immigration, then you're an evil person. You can't be Catholic. You can't be a Christian if you're against immigration. It's like, wait, it's like, you're literally skipping like 90% of the entire argument. Like literally, okay, who's going to feed them? Who's going to house them? Who's going to take care of them? Who's going to pay taxes? How are they going to get jobs? Where's their paperwork, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And they don't care. They don't care.
You don't worry about that because it's not kind. Right. Exactly. It all boils down to emotion. Right. So yeah, if anyone who's listening hears that phrase, social emotional learning, it's spreading. It's across the country at this point. Red flags need to go up everywhere because they are indoctrinating your child with a philosophy, with a mindset, with a way of thinking that is totally contrary to what you might be teaching them at home, and they want that. The school feels that they are responsible for shaping the whole child, not the parent, which is why you even see these things, what's my child learning in school? I want access to the curriculum, and schools are saying, no. That's a common thing, especially in blue states. It's awful. It's awful.
Well,
It's their way
look
to
at
get their
look
agenda.
at the teachings of the communists and the Freemasons. Now, yeah, you could be a conspiracy theorist or not, but if you look at even like the Alta Vendita, which was published and
Yes.
promulgated, by two popes. So two popes thought it serious enough that they said, "Hey, read this. You need to know about what the Freemasons and the communists want to do." Okay, it was the Freemasons at the time. Communists kind of picked it up from there. So this is not just us, tinfoil on our heads. This is two popes talking about it. And in these types of documents, they said, primarily, okay, you have to attack Peter, so you have to attack the Pope, and you have to go after the children and teach the children young. This is in their writings. This is not bogus hogwash. This is in their writings and promulgated or published by two popes to show the dangers of it, and yet we've still allowed it to happen. If you want my opinion, I say you should homeschool your kids or send them to a Catholic school. Kids should not go to a public school unless they absolutely have no other choice. That's just my opinion. I'm no official on it. Talk to your priest, but that is what I would say. And I live in a country, I'm probably going to get banned for even saying that public school, because legitimately it is illegal to homeschool in Germany. And you know who founded that law? It's illegal.
Wow.
You want? Guys, I'm going to give you no. Go back a little bit farther. Famous German, Austrian
Hitler.
German. Yeah, Hitler.
Really?
I'm not kidding. Hitler founded it. Hitler said that the state needed to have more control over the kids than the parents. That sounds pretty fascist, right? It sounds pretty Nazi. And you know what? The law still exists, Matt. The law still exists. So if anyone actually wants to look for fascists and Nazis, well, they're right here, still alive in Germany. So, ladies and gentlemen, Matt, I really appreciate that. I think it's good. It's good for people to be aware of these things, and it's good to get these insights into, what actually is taught at these schools. Because I think, as you said, many people don't ask, and that's a terrifying, terrifying thought, because our children, they are, the most important things we have in the world. I mean, anyone who has kids, they know that. So let's take that, as seriously as we possibly can, and take, the raising of our children, and remember that by a long shot, it's more important to save their souls than for them to have, an A+ in math. Now, they're both important. I'm not saying they should be a bunch of idiots. You should take it seriously, but first comes the soul. And I think that I'm sure Matt would agree with me there. Matt, any last words?
Sure. No, I mean, you really hit the nail on the head there at the end. I mean, the public school is really an arm of the communist left. It is absolutely, without a doubt. And like I said, I think there are a lot of good-willed people in it. I think there are a lot of people who are a bit naive as to the whole end goal of a lot of these programs. But in the end, they want to control your child's emotion, your child's thoughts, your child's way of thinking, because that gives them power that they need.
Perfect. Matt, what's coming up next for our last segment?
Yeah, so we've got Joe Sales is going to be joining me, and him and I are talking a little bit about the Rosary, and he's going to share with us the power that the Rosary has had in his life, and just how Catholics who might not be too familiar with the Rosary or know that much about the Rosary can pray it, can meditate on it, and can use it in their everyday life. So great segment. Don't want to miss that one.
Perfect. That's coming up next. Stay tuned.
Welcome back into Monday Mornings with Matt and Kevin on the Catholic Family Podcast. I have a very special guest with me today, a very familiar name and face in the Catholic social media world. He is a Catholic blogger from London, Ontario, Canada, and you all know him as Joe Sales. Joe, really happy to have you with us today. Welcome to the show, Joe.
Thanks, Matt. It's good to be here. I've known about the podcast for a while, and when I got your invite to be a guest, I was excited to take part.
Awesome, Joe. Well, that's good. We really appreciate you coming on. Great to get you on. So, what I wanted to start off with you, Joe, is you have spent, many years, really, and I recognize your account from years ago now. Time goes really quick. Just working to help encourage and inspire others in life by, as your bio states, stumbling from sin to sainthood. And, many users online, on Twitter, on social media, whatever platforms you're on, they look to your Twitter feed or your blog to help them really grow in their faith. And you have always made it clear too, Joe, that you pray for your followers and for those that are
Yeah,
near to
definitely.
you. Yeah, and it's evident, I would say more than anything, that you have a great love for the Holy Rosary and a deep devotion to the Blessed Mother. So, Joe, I wanted to have you on and hoping that you could, share with our listeners and even your own audience, which will link you to your own blog later on in the show. But if you can just share with us, what is the Rosary meant to you?
Well, the Rosary, for me, it's simple. It's a time to focus, a time to pray, and a time to unite with our Lord through our Blessed Mother.
Very true, Joe. So maybe you can, explain a little bit more. Each bead, when we say each of the Hail Marys in the
Yeah.
Rosary, what is something that, a Catholic should maybe be meditating on or thinking about or really focusing on as they pray? Because as you and I talked about earlier, there are those mysteries of the Rosary, right? So hopefully maybe you can explain a little bit to our audience and to your own group of listeners about these mysteries that are really special to you and that really, how does one really focus? How do you help zone in on these mysteries of the Rosary?
Well, when like my own personal experience, when I reflect, well, when I say the prayers like the Hail Marys, or I reflect on the mysteries, I try to just put myself in the moment. Like for example, one of the Rosary mysteries is finding the child Jesus in the temple, and I try to put myself in that moment, not only from uh, like Jesus's perspective, but also from the perspective of Our Lady and Saint Joseph as they try to find him. And I think the important thing is that when we reflect on the mysteries, we try to put ourselves kind of back in time, and that I find that's what works for me. Each person is different, um, but yeah, I would say, like for me, I would put myself back in time as I reflect on whatever the mystery is that I am praying.
Yeah, very true, Joe. We take these mysteries, right? The joyful, the sorrowful, and the glorious,
Yeah,
and we reflect on each of those events, right, associated
yeah,
with each mystery. So, if we're praying
yeah,
on, the agony in the garden, right, we're going back in time to the actual event of our Lord in Gethsemane, where he's
yeah,
about to endure his passion, and we almost, as you said, Joe, we put ourselves back to that moment in that event where we contemplate. So, Joe, maybe you can explain a little bit more. What might a Catholic do? So let's say I'm praying, the first sorrowful mystery. I'm contemplating the agony in the garden. Where
yeah.
should my thoughts go after that? What would you say to maybe some maybe Catholics who are new to the Rosary and they're not quite sure what to do with their own thoughts? If I'm I'm focusing on the agony in the garden, I see in my mind our Lord's suffering in Gethsemane, but should I just meditate on that image alone? Should I think of maybe suffering in my own life? What is good, maybe, would you say, for a Catholic to do as he prays this beautiful prayer?
Well, I like as you were talking about the agony in the garden, I think like to start off, I would I would definitely think about what our Lord went through, but it's also helpful to remember kind of like the struggles that we have in our own life, with the struggles that we have, while they not while they may not be as um, they might not be like what our Lord went through. It's still good to remember our own struggles, because in today's uh, society, today's age, like our struggles, like can be like just as tough as what our Lord went through, like so long ago.
Sure. Yeah, sure. And that makes the rosary, Joe. I would say it makes it very personal, right? Because
Yeah,
you can
definitely.
reflect back. I keep going back to the agony of the garden. There's many other more, but we
Yeah,
can think back. Here's our Lord in the garden suffering, and what we can do with that moment is we can bring it almost to the present, where we can think of maybe an instance in our life where we're suffering, or where our cross feels heavy, or things that are on our mind, our conscience, are very heavy too, and we can unite that with the rosary. So if I'm going through something that's challenging in life, I could even ask our Lord, by the merits of your agony in the garden, help me with those signal graces to, instill these special graces in me, these virtues in me to help me grow, right? So you would say that, like, as we
yeah,
pray and as we navigate through the mysteries of the Rosary, it helps to really see how they might compare to something we're going through ourselves, right? That's
yeah,
really some
exactly.
great
Yeah,
advice. Yeah. So, Joe, I know you and I were saying too. I don't know what you wanted to kind of dive into, but there was, there's some events in your own life where you felt that you felt very close to the Rosary, you felt very close to the Blessed Mother. Are
yeah.
there any experiences maybe that you are able to share with us that we might want to know, or hear about, that where the Rosary was very profound, or our Blessed Mother, her intercession was most evident, or very visible to you? Anything that you might want to share with us today?
Yeah, well, in uh, in 2003, I I found myself in a difficult uh, situation. I can't. I'm not going to go into too many details, just out of respect, not only for myself but privacy of others.
Sure.
Um, but it was a difficult situation. I let's just say I found myself in the courts and the legal system, and uh, during it was about a year, almost a year and a half, that I went through those difficult times. But during that time, I took time. I focused on praying. Like, I took time and I prayed the rosary every day. And I at the end of that time, so around April 2004, I received an unexpected phone call, and it was a Friday afternoon, and unexpectedly, um, my like the problems that I had faced from 2003 to April 2004, those problems went away. And if you were to go and look back, like for myself, like if I wanted, if I went to go look back, like there's there's like no, like nothing. It's like nothing ever happened. And
Hmm.
um, I yeah, so like I often attribute that to Our Lady, and to praying the Rosary. And I believe that there's a lot of power in prayer. And
Hmm.
like it's just amazing how prayer can change one's life, even unexpectedly. And yeah,
Yeah, so it sounds like, Joe, that you were in a situation, again, will be, a little vague out of respect for, your own
Yeah,
situation, but where you really had to abandon this situation to the Blessed Mother, right? You
yeah,
needed almost, I
exactly.
guess you could call
Yeah.
it, you needed supernatural help. And
Oh, exactly. Yeah,
right. And you knew that, in times of trouble, in times where, where you do need that heavenly assistance, you turned to your weapon, the rosary. And,
yeah,
and it takes humility sometimes. We have to take the
yeah,
time to pray. We have to, you know, put ourselves into her hands and say, Blessed Mother, I can't do this alone. I need your help. I need to turn to
yeah,
you. And she is very willing, Joe. Wouldn't you say, maybe you can talk about this briefly as well? She's very willing to help those who turn to her, right? Anything that you might want to maybe share with your audience about maybe Our Lady's willingness to provide grace or assistance or comfort or whatever the soul who's turning to her might need. She's very willing to do that.
she is. And like for me, like turning to Our Lady, it hasn't always been easy. But I have found through the rosary that it has become easier. And like just thinking of my own devotion to Our Lady, like I've known about Our Lady since a very young age, and like I'm grateful to my late mother and to my grandmother as well, who I remember teaching my siblings and I about like the rosary and other Marian like prayers. And I, but yeah, like this whole willing, like, uh, yeah, like
Hmm. Yeah, no, I totally agree with what you're saying, Joe, and I see it, and I think maybe, one of the things that's hard for me, and I think for a lot of Catholics too, is, especially in this day and age, is time, right? The
yeah,
rosary
exactly.
it
Yeah,
takes time. It's not something where I can just, rattle off a quick prayer or read a little small prayer, whatever. I need to be able to find, a good, maybe not a good chunk of the day, but a decent amount of time where I can actually
yeah.
sit and pray the rosary. So what might your advice be to people who say, Joe, I'm a Catholic, I'm new to the rosary, I'd like to pray it, but I don't know if I have enough time, or I'm afraid to pray this prayer. It seems really long, or, is there anything you might be able to say that might encourage somebody who's afraid to pray it? Like, how do they make this time? What
Well,
would you say to
for
those people?
but first of all, like I I don't know why I'm thinking of this now, but I remember when when I first started learning the rosary at a young age, like I used to like instead of let's say for example like the Hail Mary, in a decade of the rosary we have 10 Hail Marys, and I used to go like Hail Mary, Hail Mary, Hail Mary, Hail Mary, and so on. But I never actually like prayed or like said the prayers. And I think it's important that when we pray that we pray the prayers as they are meant to be prayed. Um, but for those who are afraid to pray the rosary or any prayer really, like I I believe it's good to start off by allowing yourself to have like 5-10 minutes and just put yourself in like silence, put away your phones, your computers, whatever, and just focus yourself and just be in that moment. And like I was talking to my wife just the other day about prayer, and like I remember saying like if you're talking to God or talking to Our Lady, like talk to them as if they're sitting right beside you.
Hmm.
Yes, they may not be there in physical form, but it's a good way to start because like if you get into that habit of like talking with them, and that I'd like to believe that that will assist people as they learn more about prayer and more about the rosary. And but yeah, I would definitely take 5, maybe 10 minutes and just like say like a Hail Mary, an Our Father, and Glory Be, just to kind of start off.
Hmm.
And but yeah, I know the rosary can be kind of scary at first, especially for people who are new to that way of prayer. But it's really not that bad. Like once you get yourself into it, like you shouldn't really have. I'd like to believe you wouldn't have any doubts, and that you would be
Sure.
able to like pray.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. So for those of you listening, take Joe's advice, find some silence, put away those distractions, turn off your phone, step away from the computer, and really put yourself in solitude, right, Joe? And really
Yeah,
shut out everything else. And really, just as you said, begin to pray simply. You can say
yeah,
these small prayers very simply and get in those good habits, right? Of, as you said too, Joe, and which is, I think is really great. Praying as if they are present before you, because in a certain
yeah,
sense they are. So yeah, so
yeah, exactly.
take Joe's advice, get rid of those distractions, grab that rosary, put your phone away, computer off, all that stuff aside, and really start to turn your conscience and your mind and your heart and your soul towards God and the Blessed Virgin. So Joe, awesome. Everyone can find your blog, Joe. There's a lot of great resources and some posts on there too
Yeah,
as well. It's joesales.substack.com. I got that right, Joe?
yeah,
That's all right. Yeah. And we'll
and
link that as well. Yes, go ahead.
yeah. I do have one more thing.
Sure, of course.
One. Speaking of the rosary, what I find a lot of people are searching for like the best rosary that they can use, and
Very true.
like there are some rosaries out there that are kind of cheaply made, and but there's also a lot of good, solid, strong rosaries. And well, one of my like I've had many rosaries over the years, but one of my favorite go-to rosary companies is Rugged Rosaries.
Mm. Oh yes.
Yeah,
Oh yes.
and I know that company is well known in Catholic and even some non-Catholic circles too. But they make a really good product. And but yeah, I encourage people that when you're looking for a rosary, to find something that will last you for a long time. And like it, like I've had quite a few rosaries over the years that I've passed on to others. And
Mm.
but yeah, definitely find a good rosary to use when you pray.
I think it was, if I can just say, Joe, I think it was your account some time ago now that I saw the Rugged Rosaries. It's
Yeah,
the paracord, right? I think it's got
yeah,
the, and I bought one, yeah. So
yeah,
I saw you post about it. I think you even did a blog post about it at the time. I think you
yeah. A
did a
long time
review
ago. Yeah,
a long time ago, and yeah, I was like, oh, I got to check this out, and I did, and I love, as you said, it lasts forever. It's got the cord, so you can tug,
yeah,
you can drop that thing as many times as you'd like.
yeah,
It's solid. It's solid.
yeah.
So you're right. Very true. So, Joe, it has been absolutely wonderful having you on the show today, friend. You have a deep love for the Rosary, and I hope that our listeners today, they start praying the Rosary and they start picking up and really take your advice to heart. Really consider how to start, what to do, what to contemplate, and really put that into practice and have their spiritual life grow. So, Joe, thank you for doing one of the things that you do best, which is helping others grow in their spiritual life. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
All right. So, Joe, we appreciate you, and we look forward to having you again sometime.
Yep. Thank you.